Life has this funny way of testing you. Sometimes it's a gentle nudge. Sometimes it's a full-blown earthquake. For me, it felt like I'd been living through a series of aftershocks for the past year. I'm Alex, and if you've ever found yourself back at your childhood home, trying to piece your life back together, only to be met with passive aggression disguised as tough love, then this story might just hit home for you. Because my family, my very own flesh and blood, decided that the best way to show their disapproval of my situation was to change the family Wi-Fi password to LazyFreeloader. Yeah, you read that right. And the kicker. The internet service was in my name, my money. If you've ever felt like your generosity was being taken for granted, or worse, weaponized against you, then settle in. Because you won't believe what happened next. And if you've had to deal with something similar, a family that just doesn't see your worth, drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your stories. My journey back home was not one I'd ever envisioned. Just over a year ago, my life was, by all accounts, on track. I was a junior software engineer at a promising tech startup, living in a small but cozy apartment downtown, and navigating the exciting, if sometimes chaotic, world of my 20s. Then, the earthquake hit. My startup, like many during that economic downturn, imploded, layoffs. My apartment lease was up, and with no immediate job prospects, staying wasn't an option. To top it all off, a serious, unexpected health issue cropped up, requiring extensive treatment and recovery time. It was a perfect storm, leaving me adrift, financially strained, and emotionally exhausted. So, with a heavy heart and a wounded ego, I packed my bags and moved back into my childhood bedroom. My parents, bless their hearts, or so I told myself, offered me a place to stay until you get back on your feet. It sounded kind, supportive even, but in reality, it felt more like a temporary holding cell. My family consists of my parents, mom and dad, and my younger brother, Jake, who, at 26, still lived at home, perpetually figuring things out. From the moment I arrived, the subtle jabs began. Still looking for a job. Alex, your old firm must have really messed up. Huh, Dad would ask over breakfast. Feigning concern, Mom would add. It's a tough market, sweetie, but a lot of people just pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Jake, meanwhile, would offer a sarcastic, hey, at least you've got plenty of free time now, right? All while scrolling endlessly on his phone. Oblivious to the irony, I wasn't a freeloader. I was actively looking for work, attending physical therapy appointments, and trying to recover my strength. But because I wasn't bringing in a steady paycheck, my efforts seemed to be invisible to them. They chose to see my temporary setback as a permanent state, a reflection of my inherent laziness, rather than a series of unfortunate circumstances. I tried my best to contribute. I took over grocery shopping, cooked dinner most nights, and handled all the household chores that no one else seemed to notice. I bought new light bulbs, fixed the leaky faucet, and even reorganized the cluttered garage. My parents would nod vaguely when I mentioned these things, or dismiss them with a wave of a hand. That's fine, Alex. It's the least you can do, isn't it, Mom would say, making it clear that my contributions were just the minimum requirement for my free stay. The biggest contribution, however, was the internet. Years ago, when I first moved out for college, Dad had complained about the high cost of the family's premium internet package, which he claimed Jake used exclusively for those silly online games. Always the responsible one, and wanting to help, I had offered to put the internet bill in my name, effectively paying for the entire service out of my own pocket. Even when I wasn't living there, it was a hefty bill each month. But I saw it as my way of supporting the family, especially since my parents were always complaining about expenses. They had readily agreed. Happy to offload the cost, the internet account, to this day, remained solely in my name, with my bank account on autopay. This was a point of quiet pride for me. Even though I was struggling, I was still helping. I was still contributing something significant to the household, something they all used constantly. From Dad's news streaming to Mom's endless reality TV shows to Jake's relentless online gaming, the tension in the house was a low hum, a constant undercurrent of unspoken resentment. Every interaction felt like an audition. Every conversation a veiled critique. I felt like I was walking on eggshells, constantly trying to prove my worth, to show them I wasn't what they thought I was. But nothing I did seemed to matter. Their perception of me as a lazy freeloader was already cemented, regardless of the reality. Then came the morning of the Wi-Fi password change. I woke up, feeling a bit better after a rough night of physical therapy pain, and reached for my laptop. I needed to apply for a few more jobs, finish a coding project to keep my skills sharp, and maybe watch a tutorial video. But when I tried to connect to the Wi-Fi, it wouldn't work. The familiar network name was there, but my stored password wasn't logging in. I typed in the old password again, slowly, carefully, still nothing. Frustration bubbled up. The internet was my lifeline to the outside world, to job opportunities, to friends, to a semblance of normalcy. I went downstairs, where Mom was making coffee. "Hey, Mom," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "Did the Wi-Fi go out? My laptop won't connect." She glanced up, a faint, almost imperceptible smirk on her face. "Oh, the Wi-Fi? Yes. Your father changed the password last night. He said the old one was too easy to guess." My stomach dropped. Dad changed the password without telling me. The person who paid for it, he did. What's the new one? Mom took a sip of her coffee, her gaze flickering away from mine. It's quite simple, really. Just remember what he's always saying." She then spelled it out, slowly, deliberately, LazyFreeloader. The words hit me like a physical blow. Lazy freeloader. My breath hitched. It wasn't just a password, it was a dagger, a public, digital declaration of their contempt. It was a message meant solely for me, crafted to humiliate, to sting. My face burned. My hands clenched into fists. Jake, who had just walked into the kitchen, stifled a giggle, his eyes darting to Mom, then to me. Dad's booming voice drifted in from the living room, where he was watching the news. "Morning. Everyone, internet's working great now. Isn't it much more secure?" I stared at Mom, my voice a strained whisper. "Mom, you let him do that. You know I pay for the internet. You know I've been looking for work, that I've been sick." Her casual dismissiveness was almost worse than the insult itself. "Oh, Alex, don't be so dramatic. It's just a password. Your father was just making a point. You know, a little tough love. He just wants to see you succeed." Dear, tough love, that phrase. It was their go-to excuse for every cutting remark, every dismissive gesture, every act of emotional neglect. It was the cloak they wore to justify their cruelty. But this was beyond tough love. This was a deliberate act of public humiliation, broadcast across our home network. A wave of something cold and sharp washed over me, overriding the humiliation. It wasn't just anger, it was a profound sense of betrayal. They weren't just taking my contributions for granted. They were actively mocking them. They saw my vulnerability, my struggle, and instead of offering support, they chose to kick me when I was down. My mind raced, replaying every condescending comment, every unseen chore, every unacknowledged sacrifice. The times I'd stayed up late fixing their computer issues. The times I'd chauffeured them around when their car was in the shop. The times I'd listened patiently to their endless complaints without ever voicing my own. It was all laid bare, revealing a pattern of passive aggression and profound disrespect. I walked back to my room, my laptop suddenly feeling heavy in my hands. I stared at the Wi-Fi network name on the screen. Lazy Freeloader. The words seemed to mock me, to burn into my vision. For a long moment, I just sat there, simmering. My immediate instinct was to confront them, to yell, to demand an apology. But what would that achieve? More dismissiveness? More tough love excuses? They wouldn't understand, they didn't want to understand. Their perception was their reality, and in their reality, I was the burden, the one not pulling my weight. But then, a different thought, cold and clear, began to form: the internet. The one thing they all relied on. The very thing they had used to insult me. And it was in my name, paid for by my money. The money they believed I wasn't earning. The money that made me a freeloader, a slow, dangerous smile touched my lips. They had used the internet, my contribution, as a weapon against me. What if I turned that weapon around? What if I showed them just how much of a freeloader I truly wasn't? If you've ever felt like your family was using you, I muttered to myself, staring at the screen, and you reached your absolute breaking point, then you know this feeling. This wasn't just about the Wi-Fi password. It was about years of feeling unseen, unheard, and undervalued. It was about being taken for granted, about having my contributions dismissed, and my struggles mocked. The LazyFreeloader password was simply the final, unbearable straw. My mind, usually prone to overthinking, became remarkably clear. I knew exactly what I had to do, not in anger, not in haste, but with a quiet, steely resolve. This wouldn't be a childish tantrum. This would be a calculated move, a statement of boundaries, a reclamation of my dignity. They wanted to make a point. I was about to make a much bigger one, and it was going to hit them where it hurt the most. The words lazy freeloader burned into my brain. I closed my laptop, the screen reflecting my own stunned, hurt face. It wasn't just the insult, harsh as it was the sheer audacity, the absolute disregard for my feelings, my efforts, my very presence in their home. If you've ever felt like your family was looking right through you, seeing only what they wanted to see, then you know this unique kind of invisible pain. I spent the next few hours in my room, replaying every moment since I'd moved back in. It was like a terrible highlight reel of passive aggression and emotional neglect. My health issues, which had brought me back home in the first place, were largely ignored. "Oh, you'll be fine, Alex. Just need to get some sunshine," Mom would say. Even when I was exhausted from physical therapy, my attempts to explain the complex nature of my recovery were met with blank stares or a quick change of subject. They didn't want to hear about my pain. They wanted to hear about my job prospects. And the job hunt itself, it was relentless. I was sending out dozens of applications every day, networking online, tailoring my resume, taking coding refreshers. My background in software engineering was strong, but the market was incredibly competitive. Every rejection email felt like a punch to the gut, and coming home to their unspoken judgment made it even harder. They never asked about my interviews, never offered a word of encouragement, just the constant, lingering question, "Still looking?" Alex delivered with a tone that implied I wasn't looking hard enough. This wasn't new behavior, though this had been a lifelong pattern. My parents, while providing a comfortable upbringing, had always been conditional in their affection. Success was praised. Struggle was met with thinly veiled disappointment. My accomplishments were celebrated as reflections of their good parenting, while my setbacks were seen as personal failings. I remembered trying to explain to my dad, years ago, that I wanted to minor in creative writing in college. His response had been a dismissive laugh. "Creative writing, Alex. What are you going to do with that? Write greeting cards. Focus on your engineering. That's where the money is. That's a real career." That conversation had shut me down, pushing my artistic interests deep inside, making me feel foolish for even considering them. It was always about what they wanted for me, what reflected well on them. My younger brother, Jake, was just as bad, if not worse, because he was still riding their coattails. He worked part-time at a local comic book shop, a job he clearly enjoyed, but which offered no real career path or financial independence. He spent the rest of his time holed up in his room, playing video games, watching anime, and ordering takeout. Yet, because he was finding himself, his words, not mine, he was somehow exempt from the same scrutiny I faced. His perceived lack of ambition was tolerated, while my temporary setback was condemned. He contributed nothing financially to the household, not even a fraction of what I did with the internet bill. Yet I was the freeloader. The hypocrisy burned. The internet, specifically, was a constant point of contention. Even before the password incident, my parents would frequently complain about the cost, despite the fact that I was paying for it. "This internet bill is outrageous. What is Jake doing with all this data?" Dad would grumble, conveniently forgetting that I was the one whose bank account it hit every month. And Jake, rather than defending me or even acknowledging my contribution, would just shrug and say, Yeah, it's pretty wild. He benefited directly from my generosity, yet never hesitated to join in the subtle chorus of complaints against me. It was during these quiet moments of reflection that the full weight of their emotional gaslighting became clear. They weren't just criticizing me, they were twisting reality to fit their narrative. They made me doubt my own efforts, my own struggles, making me feel guilty for simply existing in their space. "You're being too sensitive, Alex," Mom would say. "We just want what's best for you." But what they wanted was for me to get a job, any job, to alleviate their perceived burden, and to fall back into the role of the self-sufficient, non-demanding daughter they preferred. I knew I needed to talk to someone outside the family's echo chamber, someone who could offer a clear, unbiased perspective. My best friend, Chloe, who lived a few states away, was the first person who came to mind. She was a no-nonsense, fiercely supportive friend, a psychologist by profession who understood family dynamics better than anyone. I called her that evening, my voice tight with suppressed emotion. "Chloe," I started, "you are not going to believe what my family did." I poured out the whole story: the job loss, the health issues, moving back home, the endless subtle digs, and finally, the Wi-Fi password. I didn't hold anything back. The humiliation, the anger, the profound sense of betrayal. Chloe listened patiently, her calming presence evident even over the phone. When I finished, there was a long pause. "Alex," she said, her voice gentle but firm, "what they did with that password is beyond tough love. It's cruel. It's a deliberate act of public humiliation within your own home. It's a clear message that they don't respect you, despite your contributions." "But I pay for the internet," I cried, the indignation finally bubbling over. "They know that. How can they call me a freeloader when I'm covering their entire internet bill, which they all use constantly?" "That's precisely why it's so egregious," Chloe explained. "It exposes their hypocrisy and their willingness to disregard your very tangible contributions to maintain their narrative about you. They want you to feel indebted, to feel like a burden, because that gives them control. And they're gaslighting you, making you doubt your own perception of reality by dismissing your feelings as dramatic or sensitive." Her words were a lifeline, a validation of everything I had been feeling. It wasn't me, it was them. Their behavior was the problem, not my reaction to it. "So, what do?" I asked, feeling a sliver of hope cut through the despair. "I can't just ignore it. I can't keep living like this." "No, you can't," Chloe agreed. "And frankly, you shouldn't. This isn't just about a Wi-Fi password, is it? It's about years of them taking advantage. Of you being the responsible one, the problem solver, the one who cleans up their messes, and never getting the credit or respect you deserve. I even paid for their new living room furniture last year when they kept complaining they couldn't afford it after an unexpected home repair." I confessed, the memory bubbling up. "They didn't even say thank you, just, 'Oh, it looks nice. Alex, good choice.'" "Exactly," Chloe said. "They've systematically minimized your contributions and maximized their perceived sacrifices. This Wi-Fi incident is just the culmination of a long pattern of disrespect and emotional exploitation. So, the question is, what are you going to do about it?" "I don't know," I admitted. "I want to scream. I want to tell them exactly what I think of them. But it won't change anything, will it?" "Probably not in the way you hope," Chloe confirmed. "They're deeply entrenched in their patterns, but you can change how you react. You can change the dynamic. You can set a boundary so clear, so undeniable, that they have no choice but to acknowledge it." That's when the idea solidified. It had been brewing, a faint whisper in the back of my mind since I saw that password. It wasn't about yelling or begging for an apology. It was about action, a precise, impactful action that would speak louder than any words. "The internet," I said, a dangerous calm settling over me. "It's in my name. I pay the bill every single month." "Yes," Chloe prompted, sensing the shift in my tone. "They used it to insult me," I continued, my voice low and steady. "They used my contribution, my money, to call me a freeloader. What if I just canceled it?" There was a stunned silence on Chloe's end, then a slow, appreciative chuckle. "Alex, that is chef's kiss. Absolutely brilliant, poetic justice. Even, it's not about revenge. Not really," I clarified. though a small part of me enjoyed the thought of their faces when it happened. It's about boundaries. It's about showing them that my contributions are not optional. And neither is their respect. They want to call me a freeloader, fine. Let's see how much they enjoy freeloading off nothing. Chloe's advice shifted from emotional support to strategic planning. Okay, so how do you do this? Do you give them notice? Do you cut them off cold turkey? What about your job search? Cold turkey, I decided immediately. No warning, because they gave me no warning with that password. As for my job search, I can use public Wi-Fi at the library or coffee shops. It'll be inconvenient, but less inconvenient than living in this constant state of disrespect. We discussed the practicalities. I would log into my internet provider account online, schedule the cancellation, and make sure I received a confirmation. I'd ensure all my own devices were switched over to mobile data or ready for public Wi-Fi. I'd prepare for their inevitable outrage. The more I thought about it, the more empowered I felt. This wasn't a petty act. It was a reclamation of my power, for too long. I had tried to earn their love and respect by being compliant, by being helpful, by sacrificing my own needs for theirs. And it had only led to more disrespect. This was me, finally drawing a line in the sand. This was me saying, no more. The next morning, I woke up with a clear head. The LazyFreeloader password still stared at me from my laptop screen. It no longer stung, instead. It fueled a quiet, determined resolve. They wanted a freeloader fine. They were about to learn the true cost of disrespect. And it was going to be a very, very quiet house. The LazyFreeloader password wasn't just a rude awakening. It was a catalyst. It ignited a fire within me that had long been dampened by years of striving for my family's elusive approval. After my conversation with Chloe, the strategic calm settled in. This wasn't about a tantrum. This was about drawing a line, a very clear, digital line in the sand. The next morning, I went through my usual routine, got dressed, went downstairs, and tried to act as normal as possible. My parents were at the kitchen table, Dad reading the newspaper on his tablet connected to my internet. Mom sipping coffee and scrolling on her phone also connected to my internet. Jake was still asleep, undoubtedly dreaming of uninterrupted online gaming on my internet. The sheer irony was almost comical. If it wasn't so infuriating. Morning, Alex, Mom said, her tone saccharine. Did you manage to connect to the Wi-Fi? It's much better now, isn't it? I managed a tight smile. Oh, yes, Mom. Crystal clear. Funny how a new password can really make a difference. I left it at that. Watching their faces for any sign of recognition or remorse, there was none. Just smug satisfaction. They truly believed they had taught me a lesson. They had no idea the lesson was about to be returned. With interest. My health continued to be a challenge. Physical therapy was draining, and the recovery from my medical procedure was slow. There were days I felt exhausted, defeated, just wanting to curl up in bed and disappear. But then I'd remember that password, those condescending tones, and a fresh wave of resolve would wash over me. My energy, instead of being spent on trying to please them, was now channeled into getting better, finding a job, and, most importantly, orchestrating my exit strategy from this emotionally draining household. I spent most of the day at the local library. The public Wi-Fi was slower, less reliable than what I had at home, but the quiet hum of productivity and the respectful anonymity were a welcome change. I applied for more jobs, worked on a personal coding project that truly interested me, and started researching apartments. Not just any apartments, but ones that were affordable, close to public transport, and far enough away from my parents' house to provide a genuine sense of escape. While at the library, I logged into my internet provider's account on their secure computer. The process was surprisingly easy. I navigated to the cancel service option, feeling a thrill of defiance. The website asked for a reason. I typed, lack of satisfactory service and disrespectful household environment. It felt good. A small act of rebellion in the digital realm. I confirmed the cancellation. Effective in 2 days, giving them a tiny grace period. Though they wouldn't know it, I received an immediate email confirmation. This was real. The next evening, I decided to test their boundaries one last time. A sort of final confirmation of their ingrained disrespect before I pulled the plug. I made dinner a big, elaborate lasagna that took hours. I set the table, lit candles, and tried to create a pleasant atmosphere. I wanted to see if they would acknowledge my effort, offer genuine appreciation, or if their narrative of my laziness would persist. Dad came home, barely glancing at the table. "Smells good," he grunted, already heading to the living room to watch TV. Mom joined him, engrossed in her phone. Jake finally emerged from his room, eyes bleary, immediately heading for the fridge. "Dinner's ready," I announced, trying to keep my voice even. "Oh, good," Mom said, not looking up. "I'm starving." Jake grabbed a plate, piled it high with lasagna, and promptly took it back to his room. Not a word of thanks, not a glance, just consumption. Dad came to the table, ate quickly, and then, mid-bite, looked at me. "So, Alex, still no word from any of those tech companies, you know? Your brother's friend just got a job at a pretty good accounting firm. Maybe you should look into something more stable." My fork clattered against my plate. "Dad," I said, my voice dangerously low, "I'm a software engineer. My skills are in tech, and I'm applying for jobs daily. It's a competitive market right now." He waved a dismissive hand. Yes, competitive. But a good worker finds a way, doesn't he or she, you know? Jake's friend always hustled, even when things were tough. The subtext was clear. Jake's friend, who was actively employed, was a hustler. I, the one currently struggling, was not. The lasagna, which I had poured my energy into, suddenly tasted like ash. My efforts, my contributions, my very identity were invisible. This interaction solidified it. There was no point trying to reason with them, to explain, to earn their respect. They had built a narrative around me, and they were sticking to it. My physical therapy pain, my emotional exhaustion, my genuine efforts, none of it mattered. Later that night, I checked the internet provider's app one last time. The cancellation was scheduled. The last remaining connection, the physical manifestation of my financial contribution to their comfort, was about to be severed. It felt like holding a live wire, knowing that in a few hours I would cut it, and the sparks would fly. The final hours ticked by. I didn't sleep much. I felt a nervous excitement, a sense of impending liberation. This wasn't just about the internet, it was a symbol. It was the physical manifestation of me finally saying, "You want to call me a freeloader, fine. Then you can deal with the consequences of not having a freeloader's contributions." The next morning, I woke up early. Before anyone else stirred, I grabbed my phone. The Wi-Fi icon at the top of the screen had the dreaded exclamation mark next to it. No connection. I tried to refresh. Nothing. It was done. The internet was off. I waited. The morning unfolded as usual. Dad came down first, heading straight for the coffee maker. Then he reached for his tablet. I heard a small grunt of annoyance. He tried again, a louder grunt. "Honey," he called out to Mom, who was still in bed. "Is the internet out? My tablet won't connect." Mom mumbled something from the bedroom. A few minutes later, she came downstairs, still in her pajamas, phone in hand. "My phone won't connect either. Did you pay the bill, Arthur?" "Of course I paid the bill," Dad retorted, his voice rising in frustration. "It's on autopay unless—" "Alex, did you mess with anything?" His eyes narrowed, suspicion replacing annoyance. I was sipping my coffee, feigning innocence. "Me, why would I mess with the internet? Dad—" "Well, you're always on it, aren't you?" he grumbled, unaware of the irony of his words, given the password he chose. Just then, Jake stumbled out of his room, his phone already in hand, his face pale. "Dad, Mom, the Wi-Fi's down. I can't connect to my game." What happened? His voice was laced with genuine panic. For him, the internet was oxygen. Dad tried restarting the router. Mom tried calling the internet provider, but their automated system just routed her around endlessly. The frustration in the kitchen grew thicker than the morning coffee. Jake was practically hyperventilating. "This is ridiculous," Dad exclaimed, throwing his hands up. "We pay a fortune for this service." "Actually, Dad," I said, my voice calm, clear, and perfectly audible in the suddenly tense silence. "You don't pay for it." All three heads snapped towards me, their faces, a mixture of annoyance and confusion, turned to shock. "What are you talking about, Alex?" Mom asked, her voice sharp. "I'm talking about the internet bill," I stated. setting my coffee cup down with a deliberate clink. It's in my name. It always has been. I've been paying for the family's entire internet service for the past 5 years, even when I lived on my own. I still paid for it to help you out. Their jaws collectively dropped. They seemed to genuinely have forgotten, or perhaps willfully ignored, this very significant contribution. But that's not possible, Dad stammered. I thought it was a shared expense. No, Dad, I corrected him, a wry smile touching my lips. It was never a shared expense. It was entirely my expense. And since I was recently informed, via your thoughtful new password, that I am a lazy freeloader, I decided that it made no sense for a lazy freeloader to pay for the internet for a family that clearly doesn't appreciate it. Jake let out a small, strangled gasp. You canceled it. Yes, Jake, I confirmed, meeting his horrified gaze. I canceled the internet service, effective this morning. The silence that followed was deafening. It wasn't just the lack of Wi-Fi. It was the immediate, undeniable consequence of their actions. The insult, delivered so casually, had come back to bite them hard. They were stripped of their primary source of entertainment, communication, and for Jake, his entire digital world. Dad's face contorted in a mix of fury and disbelief. You selfish, ungrateful. Ungrateful, I cut him off, my voice rising slightly but still controlled. Dad, for months, I've been trying to rebuild my life. I've been dealing with a major health issue. I've been looking for work every single day, while also taking care of the house, doing the shopping, cooking your meals. And your response was to brand me a lazy freeloader in our own home, on a service I paid for. Mom interjected, her voice wavering. Alex, it was just a joke. Your father didn't mean anything by it. A joke, I scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping me. A joke that cuts deep. Mom, a joke that dismisses my every effort, every struggle. A joke that completely invalidates my contribution to this household. You both complain about money, about expenses. But you conveniently forget that I've been covering a significant one for years, quietly, without asking for anything in return. And then you insult me for it. Jake, realizing the full scope of his digital deprivation, began to whine. But my game, Alex, I was almost at level 50. What am I supposed to do now? His self-absorption was almost astounding. You can get your own internet, Jake, I retorted, my patience wearing thin. Or you can get a job and help pay for it. The confrontation was explosive. Dad was furious, sputtering with indignation. Mom was trying to play the peacemaker, but her efforts were transparent and ineffective. Jake was just a ball of frustrated self-pity, but I stood my ground. Unwavering, for the first time in my life. I wasn't backing down. I wasn't trying to appease them. I was simply stating the facts and letting them deal with the immediate, undeniable consequences of their disrespect. The internet was off, and it was all on them. The silence in the kitchen, once deafening, was now filled with sputtering protests and bewildered outrage. Dad paced back and forth, running his hands through his thinning hair. I can't believe this. Alex, this is sabotage. How could you do this to your own family? Mom, ever the martyr, dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. After everything we've done for you, bringing you back into our home, and this is how you repay us. Jake, meanwhile, was experiencing a full-blown digital withdrawal. He wandered around, clutching his phone like a security blanket, muttering to himself, No Wi-Fi, no Wi-Fi. What am I supposed to do? My raid starts in 20 minutes. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. This was the moment. The line had been drawn, and now I had to hold it. What you've done for me, Dad, I said, my voice cutting through his theatrics, is call me a lazy freeloader on a service I've paid for. For 5 years, what you've done is constantly dismiss my efforts, invalidate my struggles, and take every single one of my contributions for granted. It was a joke. Alex, a bit of tough love, Mom insisted, her voice rising. A joke at my expense. Mom. A joke that was designed to humiliate me. Do you honestly think that's love? Is that how you show appreciation? I looked from one of their indignant faces to the other. And as for repaying you for bringing me back into your home, how about the fact that I cook, clean, do your grocery shopping, handle your errands, and fix everything that breaks around here, all while I've been recovering from a major health issue and diligently looking for work. Is that freeloading to you? Dad stopped pacing. But the internet. Everyone needs the internet. Alex, this is a basic necessity. It is a basic necessity, Dad. I agreed, which is why I've been paying for it, without complaint, for years. You were happy to use it then. Weren't you happy to let me cover the bill so you wouldn't have to pay a fortune? But the moment you wanted to make a passive-aggressive point, you decided to use my service, my money, to insult me. The LazyFreeloader password was the final straw. You reap what you sow. Jake, finally looking up from his lifeless phone, chimed in. But how are we supposed to get internet? Now I can't do anything. That's for you to figure out. Jake, I said, a slight edge to my voice. It's not my responsibility anymore. If you need internet, you can get a job and pay for it yourself. Or Mom and Dad can put it in their name, just like a responsible adult would. The sheer audacity of my calm delivery seemed to stun them. They were accustomed to me being compliant, to me backing down, to me trying to mediate. This direct, unyielding stance was something new. They were used to being in control, and now, they weren't. The next few hours were a whirlwind of their escalating frustration. Dad spent an hour on the phone with the internet provider, convinced it was a technical error, only to finally be told that the service had indeed been canceled by the account holder. His face when he hung up was a magnificent shade of crimson. They said you canceled it. Alex, he roared, storming into the living room where I was quietly reading. They said the account holder terminated the service. I am the account holder. Dad, I replied, not looking up from my book. I told you that. But you can't just do that. We live here. It's not about where we live. Dad, it's about whose name is on the bill and whose money pays for it. It was my account. I made a decision. You don't get to demand a service you don't pay for, especially when you use it to insult the person who does. Mom tried a different tactic. She started crying. Real, dramatic sobs. Your poor father, he's so stressed with work. Alex, this is just adding to his burdens. Don't you care about your family? I care about a family that respects me. Mom, I stated, my voice unwavering. I care about being treated like an adult, not a child who needs tough love delivered through a Wi-Fi password. My burdens, my stress, my health issues, none of that seems to matter to you. But your internet going out for a few hours is a crisis. Jake, seeing that yelling wasn't working, tried to appeal to my softer side. Come on, Alex, please, I'll pay you back. Just turn it back on. I promise I'll do chores. I looked at him. Jake, you've promised that before, haven't you? And you've never followed through. This isn't about chores or money or even just the internet. It's about respect. And until you and Mom and Dad understand that, there's nothing to discuss. The atmosphere in the house became thick with resentment. It was a cold war, fought in silence and punctuated by the occasional frustrated groan from Jake, or a muttered complaint from Dad about the internet situation. They tried to go about their day, but the lack of internet crippled them. Dad couldn't stream his news, Mom couldn't scroll through social media, and Jake was utterly lost without his online games and streaming services. The convenience they had taken for granted, the seamless connection I had provided, was gone, and they felt its absence acutely. I, on the other hand, felt a profound sense of peace. I could still access the internet on my phone's data plan for emergencies, and the library offered a quiet escape for job searching and personal projects. The discomfort of not having Wi-Fi at home was minor compared to the mental and emotional relief of no longer being subjected to their constant, low-level abuse. This digital fallout forced them to confront their dependency, not just on the internet, but on me. They had always treated me as a convenient utility, someone who would quietly provide services and contributions without complaint. Now, that utility had been disconnected, and they were left scrambling. The second day without internet was even worse for them. Dad had to drive to a coffee shop to check his emails. Mom was bored and agitated. Pacing the house, Jake was a zombie, muttering about lag and offline mode. Their lives, which revolved heavily around constant connectivity, were severely disrupted, and they had no one to blame but themselves. That evening, the confrontation escalated. They cornered me in the living room, their faces etched with a desperate blend of frustration and simmering anger. "Alex," Dad began, his voice strained. "This has gone far enough. This is ridiculous. You need to call the internet company and get it turned back on. Immediately." "No, Dad," I replied, meeting his gaze directly. "I won't. I told you why. Until there's a genuine acknowledgement of my contributions and an apology for the way you've treated me, the internet stays off." "An apology," Mom shrieked. "For what?" "For caring about you, for wanting you to get back on your feet." "For calling me a lazy freeloader," I stated, my voice unwavering. "For years of making me feel invisible and undervalued. For taking advantage of my generosity. For acting like my struggles are a burden, instead of showing an ounce of empathy." "This is blackmail," Alex, Dad accused, his face reddening. "No, Dad, this is consequences. You chose to be disrespectful. This is the consequence of that choice. It's a boundary. I'm no longer willing to financially support a household that actively disrespects me. If you want internet, you can arrange it, and you can pay for it," Jake chimed in. "But how are we supposed to even watch TV? Our smart TV needs Wi-Fi." "You have cable, Jake," I pointed out, exasperated. "You can still watch regular TV, or maybe you can find something else to do. Read a book, go outside, get a job." My words hung in the air, cold and definitive. Their faces cycled through anger, frustration, and eventually a sort of stunned silence. They realized I wasn't backing down. I wasn't just being petty. I was making a fundamental shift in the power dynamic. I was reclaiming my agency. The battle lines were drawn. The Wi-Fi password had been their opening salvo, an attempt to assert their dominance and make me fall in line. But by canceling the service, I had launched my own counterattack, one that hit them directly where their modern, comfortable lives resided. It was a physical manifestation of the emotional boundaries I was finally, fiercely, setting. The house was quiet, digitally speaking, but the emotional storm was just beginning, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a powerful surge of control. My silence, my calm, was more impactful than their angry outbursts. I had unplugged them, and in doing so, I had begun to plug myself back into my own power. The days following the great internet unplugging were a peculiar mix of tense silence and simmering resentment. My parents, Dad especially, tried every trick in their passive-aggressive playbook. They'd leave articles open on their tablets downloaded, I presumed, during brief trips to a coffee shop, or using their phone data about the importance of family harmony and reciprocity. Mom would sigh dramatically, loudly lamenting how disconnected she felt from the world, always ensuring I was within earshot. Jake remained a pale, twitchy shadow, his social life entirely dependent on the digital realm, now tragically severed. He mostly communicated through sullen grunts and the occasional muttered curse about ancient times. They were waiting for me to crack. They expected me to cave, to feel guilty, to realize the error of my ways, and restore their precious Wi-Fi. But I held firm. The clarity I had gained from Chloe's validation, coupled with the profound relief of standing my ground, was a powerful shield against their manipulations. One evening, about a week after the cancellation, the tension reached a boiling point. We were at dinner, a meal I had cooked, of course, a delicious roast chicken that they were barely touching. "Alex," Dad began, his voice surprisingly calm, almost weary. This was a new tactic. "We need to talk about this internet situation maturely. It's affecting the whole family. Your mother can't even stream her shows. And Jake is struggling. I am struggling. Alex." Jake piped up, finally looking up from his plate. "I can't even talk to my friends. My grades are probably going to drop because I can't do research." A blatant lie, as all his research involved video game walkthroughs. But I let it slide. "I understand it's inconvenient for you all," I replied, my voice measured. "But I've already explained why I canceled it. Until I receive a genuine apology for the LazyFreeloader password and a real acknowledgement of my contributions to this household, the internet stays off. It's that simple." "An apology for a joke," Mom scoffed, her calm facade crumbling. "You're holding us hostage over a joke." "Alex, that's ridiculous. We provide you a roof over your head, food on your table, And I provide you with countless hours of unpaid labor. A clean house, and used to provide your internet access, I countered. Cutting her off. This isn't about a joke, Mom. It's about respect. It's about acknowledging my worth. For years, you've taken advantage of my generosity, dismissed my efforts. And then, when I was at my most vulnerable, you humiliated me publicly in our own home. Dad's face hardened. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. Alex, you're being dramatic. You need to grow up and get over it. Life isn't fair. Sometimes you just have to suck it up. And sometimes, Dad, I said, meeting his gaze squarely, you have to stand up for yourself. I am grown up. That's why I'm setting a boundary. This isn't about being fair. It's about being respected. It's about me deciding that I will no longer accept being treated as less than, especially by my own family. His eyes narrowed, a familiar look of thinly veiled threat. So, what, you're just going to sit here and watch us suffer? You're going to inconvenience your own family. If it takes a little inconvenience for you to finally understand what it feels like to be taken for granted, then yes, I said, my voice unwavering. I am? Because it's a small price to pay for my self-respect. You made your choice when you changed that password. Now, you live with the consequences. The confrontation ended in a stalemate, but the air was charged. They clearly thought I would eventually crack. But they underestimated my resolve. I had spent my entire life trying to be the good daughter, the compliant one, the one who always absorbed their casual cruelty with a forced smile. This time, I wasn't. Later that week, they tried another tactic. The silent treatment. They'd talk around me, about me, as if I wasn't in the room. Oh, Arthur, do you remember that lovely family vacation we took before certain people moved back in? Mom would say loudly, making sure I heard. Jake would leave passive-aggressive notes on the fridge. Need Wi-Fi for school project. Or is that too much to ask? Alex. I ignored them. I retreated to my room when I wasn't out at the library or meeting potential employers. I made my own meals. I cleaned up after myself, but no longer went out of my way to do their laundry or wash their dishes. I drew my boundaries in the everyday actions, subtly but firmly. If they wanted a freeloader, they would get a truly self-sufficient one who no longer served their convenience. My progress on the job front was slow but steady. The tech market was indeed challenging, but I was getting more interviews. I even started freelancing small coding projects online using public Wi-Fi, just to prove to myself that I could generate income independently. Every small victory bolstered my confidence and solidified my resolve to move out as soon as humanly possible. I had started saving aggressively, every penny from my small freelance gigs, every bit of my remaining severance, going into a dedicated escape fund. The constant tension in the house was draining, but it was also clarifying. It showed me, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that their conditional love was not worth the price of my self-respect. They were willing to sacrifice my emotional well-being for their convenience and their outdated narrative. This wasn't a family dynamic. It was a power struggle, and I was finally fighting for myself. One afternoon, a few weeks into the internet crisis, Dad cornered me in the hallway. His face was grim. Alex, this is getting ridiculous. Your mother is distraught. Jake is failing his classes. He's not failing his classes. Dad, I interrupted calmly. He's just upset he can't play his games. And Mom is only distraught because she can't scroll through social media on a big screen. This is not about games or social media, he exploded, his temper finally breaking through his forced calm. This is about you disrespecting your family. You're selfish. You're vindictive. You're just like your Aunt Margaret, always causing trouble. Aunt Margaret was Mom's sister, who had dared to stand up to Dad years ago and was subsequently ostracized. No, Dad, I said, meeting his angry gaze head-on. I'm not being vindictive. I'm setting a boundary. I'm choosing to no longer be walked over. You and Mom and Jake have consistently treated me with disrespect, taken me for granted, and then openly mocked me. This isn't causing trouble, it's protecting myself. It's about self-preservation. But we're family, Mom wailed, appearing from behind Dad. Family helps each other. Family doesn't hold grudges over a silly password. Family also doesn't call each other lazy freeloader, I retorted, my voice rising slightly. Family doesn't constantly undermine and gaslight one another. Family doesn't use vulnerability as a weapon. This silly password was a symptom. Mom, a symptom of years of emotional neglect and financial exploitation. And I'm done with it. Dad's face was beet red. Fine, he bellowed. If this is how you want to be, if you want to make enemies of your own family, then fine. We'll get our own internet. And then you can just stay in your room, and we won't bother you anymore. It was a hollow threat, delivered with a pathetic attempt at regaining control. He wanted to push me away, but on his terms, making it look like my fault. That's exactly what I want. Dad, I said, my voice suddenly quiet, but firm. I want you to get your own internet, and I want you to leave me alone, because for the first time in a long time, that sounds like peace. I turned and walked away, leaving them standing there in the hallway. Stunned into silence, it was a brutal confrontation, but it was necessary. The emotional shackles were finally breaking. I had articulated my boundaries, calmly and clearly, in the face of their full fury, and I hadn't backed down. Over the next few days, I saw their efforts to restore internet. Dad called different providers, trying to get a quick installation. Jake, desperate, even tried to convince me to just give him my mobile hotspot password. I refused. You want internet. Jake, figure it out yourself. This is your problem now, not mine. They eventually managed to get a new service provider scheduled. But it took time. The wait, the hassle, the expense. It was all a direct consequence of their actions. The quiet house was a constant reminder of the price of disrespect. And for me, it was glorious. The peace that settled over the house, even amidst their grumbling, was profound. I also noticed a shift in my own mindset. The emotional exhaustion began to lift. My job search became more focused, less desperate. I started working out again, enjoying long walks, rediscovering aspects of myself that had been suppressed. The weight of their expectations, their judgment, was no longer crushing me. I was reclaiming my life, one boundary at a time. The climax of this period wasn't a shouting match. It was the slow, dawning realization for them that I was truly, irrevocably pulling away. My emotional detachment was more powerful than any argument. I wasn't playing their game anymore, and they were finally, agonizingly, starting to get it. The Wi-Fi had just been the beginning. My independence was the true, unstoppable force. The day the new internet service was finally installed at my parents' house was anticlimactic. I heard the technician's truck pull up, the distant hum of tools, and then, a few hours later, the faint sounds of Jake's triumphant yells from his room. The digital silence was broken. They had their internet back, but it wasn't my internet. It was theirs. A small but significant victory for me. A very expensive lesson for them. The immediate relief from the lack of Wi-Fi quickly faded for them. Replaced by the lingering tension of our recent confrontations, they paid for the new service, a monthly reminder of what their disrespect had cost them. Jake was back in his digital world, but even he seemed a little more subdued, occasionally glancing at me with a mix of awe and lingering resentment. For me, this marked a profound shift. The act of canceling the internet, of standing my ground, had liberated me in ways I hadn't anticipated. The house, while still their domain, no longer felt like a prison. My room became a sanctuary. I ate my meals alone when they were being particularly passive-aggressive, or with my laptop using my phone's hotspot for essentials if I needed to work. I continued my job search with renewed vigor, no longer burdened by the constant emotional drain of their judgment. The most significant change was my burgeoning independence. Within a few weeks of the internet crisis, I landed a fantastic job as a software development specialist for a growing remote-first tech company. It was exactly what I wanted: challenging, innovative, and entirely remote, meaning I could work from anywhere. This was a critical step in my escape plan. My health was also steadily improving, the physical therapy sessions becoming less painful, my energy levels returning. The moment my first full paycheck hit my account, I knew it was time. I signed the lease on a small, charming apartment across town, strategically far enough that a casual drop-in from my parents would be inconvenient, but close enough to visit if I chose to. It was nothing fancy, a studio. Really, but it was mine. No borrowed furniture, no judgmental glances, no passive-aggressive notes. Just my space, my rules. Moving out was quiet. I packed my belongings over several days, mostly when my parents were out or preoccupied. I didn't want a dramatic send-off, just a clean break. The evening before my official move, I had one last conversation with them. "Mom, Dad," I began, sitting them down in the living room, a room I had once tried so hard to make feel like a shared home. "I got a job, and I found an apartment. I'll be moving out tomorrow." Their reactions were a peculiar blend of feigned surprise and thinly veiled relief. "Oh, Alex, that's wonderful," Mom exclaimed, a little too brightly. "We're so proud of you. See, we knew you could do it." Dad nodded, a forced smile on his face. "Yes, well, it's about time, you know. You need your own space to really thrive. We always said that, didn't we?" The hypocrisy was astounding. They claimed pride. Yet they had been the ones actively undermining my efforts. They spoke of my need for space now that I was finally leaving, when for months they had tried to keep me trapped in their narrative of inadequacy. "Yes, you did," I said, my voice even. "And I'm taking that advice. I wanted to thank you for letting me stay here while I was recovering and finding a new job. It was a challenging time, and I appreciate the roof over my head." I chose my words carefully, acknowledging their provision without validating their narrative. "However," I continued, "I also want to be clear about why I'm leaving. It's not just for my job. It's because I can no longer tolerate the disrespect and emotional manipulation I've experienced here." Their smiles vanished. "Alex," Mom protested. "No, Mom," I interrupted, holding up a hand. "Let me finish. The LazyFreeloader password was a wake-up call. It showed me how little you value my contributions and how willing you are to use my vulnerabilities against me. I deserve to be treated with respect, and I will no longer accept anything less. My move is about establishing healthy boundaries. It's about reclaiming my dignity." Dad's face hardened. "So, you're leaving with resentment after everything?" "I'm leaving with self-respect, Dad," I countered. "And a clear understanding of what a healthy relationship looks like, I hope. In time, you'll reflect on how your actions have impacted me. But my priority now is my own well-being." I didn't wait for a reply. I stood up and walked away. There were no hugs, no emotional farewells, just a quiet, resolute exit. The next morning, I moved my remaining boxes. Jake was, predictably, still asleep. My parents were out running errands. It was a fitting, if anticlimactic, end to that chapter. End. Reclaiming my space and defining true family. My new apartment became my sanctuary. It was small, minimalist, but it was filled with peace. I decorated it with things that brought me joy, not things that had been chosen to reflect someone else's taste. The quiet was profound. No more passive-aggressive sighs, no more muttered complaints, no more Wi-Fi passwords designed to shame me. My new job was everything I hoped for. The remote work culture valued independence and results, not performative office hours. My colleagues were supportive and collaborative. I was learning, growing, and contributing meaningfully. The financial stability brought immense relief, allowing me to fully focus on my recovery and my future. My relationships with my family inevitably changed. I established strict boundaries. Phone calls were polite but brief. Visits were rare and on my terms, never for more than a few hours. I no longer offered to fix their tech issues or take on their errands. I was a supportive daughter and sister, but I was no longer their unpaid servant or emotional punching bag. Jake eventually reached out. Surprisingly, he was still dependent on our parents, but the internet crisis had shaken him. He admitted, sheepishly, that he hadn't realized how much I contributed, and that the password had been a stupid, mean joke. He even apologized. A genuine, if belated, apology. We started talking more, slowly rebuilding a connection, one free of parental influence. He was still finding his way, but there was a nascent understanding, a shared acknowledgement of the toxic environment we had both grown up in. My parents, however, remained largely unchanged. They continued to live in their bubble, occasionally sending me passive-aggressive texts about how quiet the house is now, or how much they miss my cooking. They never offered a sincere, unprompted apology for the password or their years of dismissiveness. They chose to maintain their narrative, their pride, over genuine reconciliation, and I, finally, was okay with that. I had stopped waiting for them to change. My peace was no longer dependent on their recognition or regret. The true definition of family for me evolved. It wasn't just about blood, it was about respect, mutual support, and genuine love. It was about people who lifted me up, not tore me down. Chloe remained my rock, my sounding board, my chosen family, my new colleagues, who celebrated my successes and understood my challenges, became a new, healthy support system. Lessons learned: boundaries are not selfish, they are self-preservation. For years, I blurred my boundaries to keep the peace, and it only led to deeper resentment and disrespect. Drawing firm lines, even when painful, is crucial for mental and emotional health. Your worth is inherent, not conditional. My family tried to define my worth based on my employment status or my convenience to them. I learned that my value comes from within, from my character, my efforts, and my spirit, regardless of external circumstances. Consequences are powerful teachers. My act of canceling the internet wasn't just an emotional outburst. It was a carefully calculated consequence that forced my family to confront their behavior directly. Sometimes, the most impactful lessons are learned when privileges are removed. True independence is multifaceted. It's not just financial, it's emotional, mental, and spatial. It's the freedom to choose who you surround yourself with, how you are treated, and how you define your own happiness. Today, my life is filled with purpose and peace. I thrive in my career, building innovative solutions that genuinely excite me. My apartment, small as it is my sanctuary, a place where I feel truly safe and respected. My relationship with Jake is slowly, cautiously, evolving into one of mutual respect. And my parents, they have their internet, and I have my freedom. This journey, from being called a lazy freeloader to claiming my complete independence, was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was also the most empowering. It taught me that sometimes, to find your voice, you have to unplug from the noise that silences you, and in that silence, you can finally hear your own truth, loud and clear. So, if you're out there, feeling undervalued, taken for granted, or struggling to find your voice against a challenging family dynamic, remember my story. You are not a freeloader. You are worthy. And you have the power to draw your own lines, to set your own boundaries, and to create a life where you are truly seen, heard, and respected. Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to stand up for yourself. Drop your own stories of reclaiming your power in the comments below, and share this video with anyone who might be struggling to unplug from toxic relationships. Your independence is waiting.